Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. Let's start the music. We got an interesting day today because the ECB is going, but because of the difference in when we do daylight savings time, we're gonna get ECB at 15 minutes before the market opens. So, and usually that's done before the market opens. So today might be a good day for us to just sit and listen. We'll see. But we also got a bunch of big news here in 5 minutes. You know, we got Philly Fed, and then your usual jobless claims. What else is on here? Housing starts. So pretty heavy day. Yesterday was a heavy day though too. Oh my gosh, the whole Credit Suisse drama thing was just insane. I'm really interested to see what the options look like today that we were talking about yesterday. See how that went. Looks like it's time to roll over oil. So let's just come over here. So again, we're getting insane volatility in the interest rate market. All right. And yeah, there was all over the place. Eventually, though, they said that they're going to bail out Credit Suisse. And so the treasuries came back a bit, although they are kind of on the upside at the moment. Okay. Same with the S&P 500. The S&P 500 actually did pull out a little bit of a rally yesterday, but not above the 3960 level. All right. So oil still screaming recession. Gold and silver still on the upside. Copper's still down there. The Bitcoin continues on, and the dollar took a big jump yesterday. Not up to 105 yet, but 104 is still pretty high. So that's where we're at. Since the ECB doesn't start at 7:15, we could get a potentially good trade here in about 4 minutes. Although I haven't eaten breakfast, so I am going to focus on eating breakfast as quickly as I can. All right. Silver. Well, so just going back to the chart here, I would just want to point out gold and silver have been doing dismally this year. Okay. Gold still has not clawed back the losses that they got from February 2nd. Remember, this is when we started to think, inflation is still bad and they're going to continue to raise interest rates, etc., etc. Look, they haven't recovered that, right? So then you look at silver and just think of silver as a higher risk version of gold. So they've recovered a little, but not as much as gold. So even though there may yet be a time where gold is like the darling and everything, it continues to struggle. And probably part of that is that it seems like a lot of the flight to safety against inflation is going into Bitcoin instead of gold. Right? Because it's all speculation. Man, the liquidity here in the treasuries is just nuts. We're still a minute and a half, 2 minutes out. Absolutely no liquidity out there. All right. Well, I'm not done eating here, but here we go. 5 seconds. Oh, I don't have my squawk on. That might help a little bit. This is going to be too insane to trade. Okay, 192 is jobless claims, so less than expected. 192 versus 205. Philly Fed Business Index, absolutely terrible. Negative 23.2 versus a negative 15. Building permits higher than expected, 1.524 versus 1.343. Yeah, this is going to cause the treasuries to sell. This could maybe move back up to 3.5. I would say that the treasury's reaction to it so far is pretty mild, but like liquidity is just completely dead. So I don't know. Maybe they're kind of holding back because they're saving their powder for the ECB. But let's give it a little bit here and see what they do. So courtesy of Nick Timmeros on the screen, you see the market implied probability for the Federal Reserve's March 21st meeting. The difference between raise a quarter of a point, hold the rate steady, or raise half a point. And you can see here where there was this short point where where they thought they were going to do a 50 basis point hike, which then decreased, and now the holding rate steady is coming up. Will the rate steady overcome the raise a quarter of a point? Remains to be seen. We've still got about a week for that. I do kind of wonder though, if I was the Federal Reserve and I was holding the meeting today, I think that I would be saying raise a quarter of a point, because the last thing that you want to have happen, look, what caused all of this was high interest rates, right? Last thing that you want to do is create another bout of inflation and have to go through this all over again. Except for that this time it's like, you know, rates are going to 10% or something like that. But we got a week, so let's see where the market takes us. Market certainly has not settled on an option yet, and I'm betting that at some point the Wall Street Journal will probably give us a better hint at where it's going to go. Oh, this is interesting. I missed this one yesterday. The Federal Reserve has announced it will launch the service FedNow in July, which allows banks to instantly transfer payments across the financial system per routers. I wonder why that one didn't get reported to me on any of the major news outlets that I'm looking at. All right, now I think we're ready. I think we're ready to go. I would say that was a relatively muted reaction to the information that we got. On a normal day, that would move us a decent amount. I guess that that's moved us about as much as I would expect for a piece of news like that to go, except for that volatility is so high, I would have expected us to go further. So, and the volume is all pretty mild. So, looks like people are kind of tentative ahead of the ECB. So let me show you this Imgur post from Reddit. It's using the Family Guy Meg format, right? Yeah, traders that use indicators are Meg. You guys always act like you're better than me. And then down at the bottom, it says price action traders, support and resistance traders, etc. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. Funny, all of you people that still believe in technical analysis. I just, how do I approach this one? I'm gonna go full on. I'm better than you for this one. I think it's I think it's justified. I think that it will catch the attention. maybe it will cause people to be like, oh, yeah, but maybe technical analysis is stupid. Support and resistance in particular is... There are areas that act as support and resistance, but like trading them doesn't really... Never works out. Homeowners who held on to a 3% mortgage rate are becoming accidental landlords. Gotta read that one. Good morning, Anastafa. Feeling like my camera is off a little bit. Let's do that. Wow, my best friend is finding out she's going to be unemployed via Indeed. Oh, because they posted a job posting for her job. That sucks. Ouch. Uh-oh. I shouldn't have read Reddit this early. Now I'm finding interesting things that you guys probably don't care. Oh my gosh. Right. The uncertainty behind Flash's return. Flash might not come back to StarCraft? He was discharged from the military in February. It was rumored that Flash made well over 30. Okay, this is relevant to us, actually. Wow. It was rumored through the grapevine from various streamers / gossip small talks. Oh, hold on. Hey. Oi. Okay, the headline is some ECB lenders may be vulnerable. Triggering buying in the treasuries like mad. Good grief. Good grief. Dude, this ECB meeting is gonna be the most insane ECB press conference ever. That was a wild move. Holy crap. That is just... Whew. I'm still, that was really like the volume that popped off there when that happened was something else. Like probably 10k amount of volume just all of a sudden going off. The S&P 500 did not react to it nearly as strongly as the treasuries did, but wow. I wonder if like market makers just like completely puked there or something. I don't think I've ever seen such a like just a collective like and then all the way back. It's like, what? Yep, I'm just gonna put that little you know, trade management window away for a little bit. I don't think that it's very wise. Like even for me to go and do sim in these kinds of conditions would maybe be irresponsible. Somebody might think, oh yeah, I can trade this. That was just so wild. Everybody comes rushing in till it's out of their control. Okay, so the long and short of this thing that I was reading before that. So, Flash becomes the head of various crypto-related company PR representatives. The contract is leaked, and other influencers revealed to be involved in a coin startup pre-launch in secret. The implied crypto pump and dump never happens and is stopped before launch, and then we haven't heard anything from Flash since then. So he was basically involved in an influencer pump and dump. I tell you what, guys, in 2020, 2021, I received so many. Oh my gosh. Flash is the greatest StarCraft Brood War player ever. He lives in South Korea. So, yeah, it's just it's a stupid influencer thing, right? But man, during that whole period, it was like every day I would get emails asking me to promote this thing. It wasn't all crypto stuff, but a lot of it was crypto type websites. And usually they were more like exchanges rather than individual coins. But I straight up said, I will not promote anything crypto related, period. And I am so glad that I did that. I don't think that I would have gotten, I definitely never have gotten involved in any pump and dump. But I think that even just being involved in the cryptocurrency ecosystem at the time probably would have made me vulnerable to being involved in some sort of scandal. Like, it's just so... Have you heard of No Nonsense Forex? Nope, never heard of them. But you got to be careful anytime that retail traders are telling you about Forex, right? See, so over here, I haven't ranted about this in a long time, so let's go over it, okay? Because I don't think I've ever ranted about it for Trading Bunny, okay? There are a lot of advantages and things that you can do over here in the futures that you can't do in the Forex industry, right? You can see what the bids are and offers are. You can read the volume. And a lot of the information that we're trading on is much more available to a retail trader. For instance, we just had a wild pop off there. I heard it immediately in the news squawk. I could have tried trading that, except for that I just knew in this situation that it's not really a good play. Okay. In Forex, you can't even see the volume. This is all stuff that just happens interbank. So what happened was these big brokerages, I guess, found a way to be like, oh, like we can act like one of the banks and the traders can just trade against us. And that's what they do. You're literally just trading against your Forex broker. And yeah, the largest Forex broker in the United States got banned. So anybody that is actively pushing Forex is probably not too bright, in my opinion. Yeah, Forex is closer to an actual casino than we colloquially refer to in futures and stock trading. Yeah. Like you got to realize that in the Forex world, there's literal insider trading, right? People in governments know what is going to happen, know what kind of announcements are going to be made, etc., and trade on it. And there's absolutely no regulations or anything whatsoever to stop them from doing that, right? So you are at a massive disadvantage in the Forex world. I'm sure there are people that make money doing it, but by and large, it's like, yeah, it's like a bucket shop is what Uzi calls it. I think that's accurate. Same with what do we call these contracts for difference, CFDs? That's like a literal bucket shop. And I can't believe that the UK still allows people to trade those. I'll never forget when MT4 was big and someone leaked the virtual dealer plugin. Boston, I have never heard of that. There's something about it on Baby Pips. Behind the curtain, that industry is certainly crooked. Yeah. Brokers, please read. Yeah, this is really old. This is the stuff that I'm seeing on this is like from back in 2008. Maybe Cashback Forex will tell me. Have you ever felt that your broker is out to get you? Well, he may. Do a Google search on virtual dealer plugin in MT4 and read up on it. It's pretty scary. The Forex broker virtual dealer plugin can corrupt your trading and eat your profits by using the automated execution delay feature. There is a MetaQuotes PDF circulating in the internet that is a manual for brokers on how to use the infamous virtual dealer plugin. We would post this PDF here, but we no doubt would be contacted by MetaQuotes for copyright infringement and be forced to delete it. The PDF document reveals what we all expected, that there is software out there that allows the broker to engage in a number of dirty tricks, namely execution delay by 1 to 5 seconds. In the course of the above delay, if the price moves in the client favor, potential profitable slippage for the client, the broker can determine the low percentage of client orders on volume to be requoted at the better price. 90% of profit slips are quoted at the old price or rejected. In the course of the above delay, if the price moves against the client gets requoted at a new price, with the broker selecting the upper limits of the max negative slippage from 1 to 10 pips. Gap mode dedicated to processing orders on news with conditions to make all pending orders to be filled at the worst possible slippage. Wow. So it really just gives you terrible execution. By automating a predetermined execution delay. Yep. I mean, I always disliked MetaTrader, but I did not know that it was that bad. So wait, how does that work then? Was it like you get is this like something that's built into every version of MT4, and so it allows the broker to do this based on all MT4 users that they have? Is a gap order where do they fill up the worst price for the claim? Then I've heard the term. You know, I'm not sure. I've never really heard that as like a formal term. There used to be a video of someone using it on YouTube called ECN Jesus, and I haven't been able to find it in forever. I think I can find a better article than this. I think it's really funny. This article is like, just search for Google, and then if you search for Google for that exact phrase, you just get their article. I don't know. I wonder. I am sure. So with futures, there are a lot more regulations. I mean, that's the real problem, is that Forex was never something intended to be offered to retail traders. And that what, 2 or 3 years ago, they banned the largest Forex broker in the United States, I think is really, really telling. Okay, so there are a lot of rules about futures that kind of prevent your introducing broker and your clearing firm from doing these kinds of games with you, right? Like if I put an order in, it should like immediately hit, right? If it doesn't, then I start to get, you know, that almost never happens. But I still wonder what sort of games they could potentially play with you. Yeah, it was FXCM. You're right, it was FXCM. Your rhythmic data is lagging? Really? Well, so here's what I would say is, first of all, in these kinds of market conditions, even some of the best data feeds will have a little bit of trouble. Okay, so just be aware that in these kinds of fraught market conditions, that is an additional risk that we face. But second of all, I'm not having any problems, and I don't know what the amount of lag that you're getting is. So you might want to try just like restarting your application, restarting your machine, making sure that it's not anything on your end that's causing the lag, because that can certainly happen. Why do they call it the virtual dealer plugin? Yeah, it was a broker side tool. I guess what I'm getting at though is like, if the broker offered multiple tools and you weren't using MT4, then would that make you not vulnerable to that scheme? Not that it matters, not that I'm going to trade Forex, but still. Tell you what though, the market definitely will play with you like that. Like it just comes back to, you know, everybody calls me paranoid, and it's 100% I'm paranoid. 100% I'm paranoid. Every time that I get an email, somebody wants to promote a product, I'm paranoid. I'm like, there's no way I'm ever going to promote a product unless it's something that I want to actively use every day. At least in terms of like affiliate links. And it, you know, if it's a service that's relevant to my users that people are going to see and they're going to ask me questions about anyways, I love to make videos for that. Okay. And even if it's a sponsored video, I can do that as long as you guys know that it's a sponsored video, right? But I'm always paranoid that somebody's trying to pull some sort of fast one. And then when I'm taking trades, yeah, I'm always paranoid. I'm paranoid that somebody will watch the trade and try and trade against it. I'm paranoid that the robots will drag their feet if I go and take an order. You know why I'm paranoid about it? Because you can literally see it happen sometimes, right? If you came over to the 30 year here, okay, and took a trade, I guarantee you that the micro future would start dragging its feet on you. Because you'd be like the only person to have taken a trade, right? So yeah, the market maker has every reason to not, you know, if you bought it, the market maker has every reason to give you a bid to sell it back into that's absolutely terrible. And when nothing else is going on, that's like one of the primary factors behind what the market maker does. So like, and you can't win that game, because if you just say, oh well, I'll just go and do the opposite thing, it will just react to what your order is doing, whatever way it is that you go, or the majority of you retail traders do. It's going to go the opposite way. You can't win in that situation, right? They play those games like that. If I take an order, it's got to be, listen, some big old trader out there. You just think, there's a big trader out there that wants to fuck me over and wants to take my money away. Would it make sense for that trader to actively trade against me in this situation? Right? Would it make sense for them to actively trade against me in this situation, right? That's why you've got to be careful about when you get in. Like, there needs to be like an active driver. This is why I don't like getting into a lot of these kinds of like more technical setup sort of things, because I know that it's like if I start doing those and all of my people watching me on my stream start doing those, they're going to trade against it. It's enough that in a quiet market you get screwed, and we've seen it happen where I don't realize that it's a quiet market and I try taking a couple of trades and you'll lose you know. It's just like, how can this even happen? But you'll lose like 5, 10, 20 times in a row. That's not random, man. Highly unlikely to get 10 to 20 in a row wrong like that. Orders that don't actually hit the market are meaningless. That's why people do well in sim but fail in real life. I don't know. I think that the reason that people do well in sim but fail in real life is because they tend to take more risk in sim, but that's probably a larger factor. I wouldn't say that trading sim is pointless though. I think that coming in and trading sim with a single contract and you've got to take it seriously is a lot better than blowing 20k for the first five years of your trading to trying to figure it out, right? But if you've traded for sim for 5 years or whatever the deal is, there is definitely going to be some growing pains, because you're going to have to realize that your orders do impact the market for sure. And like even small orders, everybody wants to believe I'm too small, but I'm telling you, every little trade counts. In fact, your orders probably, yeah, in some respects count more because of the inverse sine law, right? You've got to have an explicit edge. You have to have an explicit edge. Ask yourself, would it make sense for a large trader that just wanted to screw me over to trade against me in this situation, right? I want to be in a situation where they've got to be crazy to trade against me, right? think about, I always think of one of my favorite documentaries. I should go and watch that again. What was the name of it? It was the documentary with Mad Dog from Australia, Mad Dog the Trader, right? And when he comes in on the floor, he's talking to people. They want to know what he's going to do. And I mean, he tells them, but like when he makes a trade, everybody on the floor watches him, right? Imagine you're trading in that situation. Imagine you're that guy that everybody wants to know what you're going to do and they're going to trade against you. Potentially. If it's a bad trade, they're going to trade against you and try and ride you for all you're worth, right? How would that change your trading? Oh my gosh, my wife just came and got the baby monitor and it really scared me. I didn't expect to see a hand come out of the corner of my eye. Okay, so my news squawk is saying a bunch of things from analysts about what they think the ECB is going to do in 10 minutes here, and it kind of sounds like they think that they will maintain their hawkish tilt. Oh, I forgot about this story of homeowners who held on to a 3% mortgage. There's going to be a point at which there's going to be a lot of people that will have to move, and it's going to be like a big problem for them to move. Do you trade these 2 hours during the day? I do, absolutely, but not today. Probably not going to take a trade today, to be honest with you. In fact, it might be, I don't even know if I'll take any trades next week. If the market continues to be like this, I might just not take any trades. You got to know when you have an advantage and when you don't. And when the market can move like half a handle off of just this tiny little news headline, that's a lot of risk to have on for the way that I trade. So I've got to wait until I've got something that I'm really confident about, right? But part of trading is sitting there for hours and just waiting for the right moment, and you never know when it's going to be, but sometimes it can be, there can be big gaps between trades. But I just do not like trying to trade when there's only like 100 contracts on. Kind of ends up being a mess. See, I don't know if Amaruga is one of those guys that's like, oh, you don't take enough trades, but it really is like trying to do a YouTube channel and trying to have the stream be successful itself is kind of like an uphill battle, right? Because everybody wants you to be in a position all the time. like the things that can potentially make a good and entertaining stream seem to conflict with what is actual profitable trading far too often. And everybody wants to believe in technical analysis and approach that thing. And it's, you know, I'm telling them they're not. I think it's always going to be the case that the majority of people are going to be like, oh, well, that's not technical analysis, and disappear. If you're always stuck at one lot, then trying to trade when liquidity goes away becomes a problem risk-wise. Well, I don't know if trading multiple lots would really be the thing that helps right now. But I guess what you're really saying, maybe what you're trying to say is that, you know, if you're only willing to put one lot of risk on, then the risk is too high in this place, you know, that if the risk was at one lot was okay, then in this kind of volatility, it won't be okay. That's true. That's true, but that's not why I'm not trading right now. So the reality is that I could trade a lot bigger than I do, right? Like, the reality is I could trade the full CN and I would probably be fine. But I'm not taking a trade right now has more to do with me just acknowledging that in this environment, the edge is not this strong. Yeah, okay. I phrased it wrong, but that's what I was trying to say, is that, yeah, if you're already at one lot and you're supposed to size down when the markets get thinner, then there's nothing to size down to, sure. But I'm saying something else, which is that when the market liquidity pulls out like this, it's not very favorable to an intraday informed trader most of the time. Right? Well, in order for me to justify taking a trade, I need to hear a headline that gives me a very high confidence that, like, it resolves whatever the issue is. And even then, I probably need to be in and out. So, like, I give you a good example. At the end of the trade war between Donald Trump and China, when China, they finally, just all at once, it came out, oh, actually, China's going to back off and they're going to kind of put things on hold until after the election, right? And then they had a press conference with these China, and when the press conference happened, like, the market just took off, and then it completely came back because there's these traders and these people on Twitter saying, it's not real, they don't believe it. It was real. That was the end. That was the last we ever heard of the whole trade war thing, right? But that day, if you didn't take the quick profits, you lost it, right? So you get what I mean? Like, the market becomes so inefficient at times that even as an informed trader, your edge is just too fickle. So we like a little bit of volatility, but like during crises, it's usually better to just sit on your hands, right? Like, even if you size down, every backtest that I've ever found where there was like a certain type of market that the strategy didn't do very well in, you would say, oh, well, just switch to a different strategy or something like that in that. But every time I've done this, and I've seen some research backing this up as well, it's better to just not trade than to try and switch strategies. So yeah, here comes the ECB decision. This really is going to be like nutso. All right, here we go. I think it's going to be a hike. Yep, it's a hike. 50 basis points. Elevated uncertainty emphasizes a data-based approach. So it is hawkish. The market is not pushing down as aggressively as I would have thought. It seems like there is some selling coming through, especially in the 30-year, but there's a little bit of a liquidity hole. The increased level of uncertainty highlights the importance of a data-driven approach to the ECB's policy rate decisions, which will be determined by its assessment of the inflation outlook in light of incoming economic and financial data, as well as the dynamics of unrest. As a result, the interest rates on the main financing operations, marginal lending facility, and deposit facility will be raised. Before the recent emergence of financial market tensions, new ECB staff macroeconomic projections were finalized in early March. Inflation is projected to remain too high for too long. Okay, they're moving up here now. Okay, full clip. Is it the bond market or the... Well, I'm not entirely sure that this push up here into highs is in line with, like, the news that we're getting or anything. It may just be wash back. So it does look like, though, in the 30-year that it was like strong sell and then strong buy. So let's just kind of see. What I just heard all sounded very hawkish. Barney Frank says more on shuttering of Signature Bank. Oh man, that guy has gotten so old. Look at him. Look at how old he's gotten. He's so pale. Well, you know what? Everybody's been inside a lot this winter. I don't think I can blame anybody for being pale. ECB refrains from signaling future rate moves in their statements. Mohammed A. El Arian, setting aside for the moment financial stability concerns, the ECB hiked by 50 basis points as it had repeatedly guided, this despite revising down its inflation projections. The press conference from President Lagarde will be an important one, particularly when it comes to their other tools. Yeah. I'm really gambling here with this one, man. It's a sim. It's a sim trade, of course, but... Kind of looks like I could have gotten, so I added a lot down in here and I didn't get like my fills on my bids. Then it came back up and I took some other fills at 21 and it looks like I was a little bit off on that. Oh, I like this. Dennis Neal, SVB was symptomatic, not systemic. And it could have easily hedged its bad investment in the 10-year government bonds that were halved in value by Fed rate hikes. Yep. Symptomatic. I think that's a really important. So one of the things that I'm seeing come out, there's been two really bad takes. I've been really disappointed with the politicians' behavior around this whole SVB crisis. So on the Democrat side, the approach that they're taking is, if the government had the correct regulation in price, then nothing bad will ever happen, sort of a take, right? So they think that the rules that they made where the regional banks under 50 that are under 50 million or 50 billion in assets or something like that are not subject to the same rules that the systemically important banks are. And they think that that would have prevented SVB. I say no. So if SVB was held to those stricter standards, all that would do is reduce SVB's profit, which means that they would have gotten to the same place earlier. Wouldn't necessarily have changed the bets that they made. It wouldn't have changed the interest rates or anything like that. So all it would have done is SVB would have blown up earlier. Furthermore, Credit Suisse is a systemically important bank and has been going through all of those regulations and so forth, and they're still having a problem. So that tells you that the regulation that they're talking about doesn't solve the problem, does it? Now, on the Republican side, the thing I'm disappointed with in the Republicans is that for some reason there's a bunch of Republicans that think the correct take here is just let the depositors go bankrupt. Just let the depositors lose all of their money. They shouldn't have put their money into a bad bank. And this is a terrible take. Of course, I don't think that we can have I need to make a TikTok about this. So somebody asked, like, should they increase the amount that the FDIC insures and everything? Well, that number has changed over time, right? So they changed it to 250,000 in 2008. So if you account for inflation, maybe it should be more like 350,000. Okay. But that doesn't help the small businesses that are literally holding like millions of dollars in some of these banks sometimes, right? So that doesn't really solve the problem. So can you come in and say, well, the Federal Reserve will backstop all reserves? I'm not so sure that you can say that either. That there would be a situation where that would be too inflationary. So I think that there's kind of this thing where we can kind of take it on a case-by-case basis, and there might be some situations where you do just let people lose their money. But the SVB bank one was just too big for that to allow that to happen, you know. But man, this take that I'm seeing by some Republicans, just let them all die. I mean, that's the libertarians in the party talking. Republicans, don't listen to the libertarians, okay? It's such a like you've got an opportunity here in 2024 to really turn things around and push the Democrats out of power, take the presidency, etc., etc., etc. But there's two things I see right now that are going to hold you back, that are going to prevent you from doing that. Number one is this awful take that say you let them fail, let the depositors fail. Just okay, that would blow up the financial system. And you coming in and saying that is basically a great way to guarantee that you're never let anywhere near the system, right? The people that really know what's going on and have the money and everything, they're not going to let you touch it. That's just a great way to ensure that you lose, okay? And the second one that I see them taking is Ron DeSantis's position on Ukraine. Oh man, I'm sure some of you guys in chat will be like, oh, Seth, you totally got it wrong. But hear me out, okay? I think it's kind of a difficult situation in Ukraine, like, because it's you can't allow other countries to come in and attack the sovereignty of another nation, right? Like, you can't just come in and attack Ukraine because you feel like it. And they say like the US provoked it, but there's nothing justifies you invading another country and doing what Russia has done. Okay, but it's a huge money sink, man. Like, it is not going well right now, and it kind of seems to me like it's inevitable that Ukraine will fall and that we're going to dump a ton of money in the meantime. That's going to do us a lot of harm. And so I don't know if the United States actually comes out on top in all of that. Meanwhile, China is going around brokering peace deals between everybody. Like, holy crap, they're going to broker a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia? Like, what? Right? That's kind of a problem. Meanwhile, Ron DeSantis is over here. Oh yeah, it's a regional conflict. We shouldn't be bothering ourselves with it, right? Well, that's just not in line with public opinion. Is the problem with that, right? Like, that is going to seriously hold back your support in the general election, because people are going to know, if I vote for Ron DeSantis, Ukraine is fucked, right? So you can't take that position, man. You just can't. Not only that, but I think it harms Ron DeSantis as a candidate in his ability to differentiate himself, right? So if Ron DeSantis is just like Donald Trump's same policy, but without Donald Trump's name, I don't know if that really works in his favor in a crowded field. You know what I mean? You sure as shit can. I wish I knew. Sometimes when you guys say things like that, I don't know which of my comments you were referring to. You give zero shits what happens in Ukraine. Well, okay, so number one, it is going to affect global geopolitics. It is. This idea that we can just do whatever, we can just do our own thing and the rest of the world doesn't affect us. Doesn't work like that. Okay. Why does it not work like that? This is an important value we've got, right? We got to remember this. Teamwork, okay? Why is the United States the preeminent world power? People will make all of these things about, well, it's because they won World War II. It's because they have a lot of natural resources. It's because they control the seas. I'm telling you, that's all wrong. The reason the United States is the preeminent world power is because of teamwork. It's because the United States worked hard with other countries to create a global system, right? And the reason that we've gotten to the place that we have is because we let down too many of our allies. Is really what it comes down to. I think that if the United States had stayed in Afghanistan and had been able to work out a better kind of relationship with Iraq and, all of these other failures that we've had over the years, I think Russia thinks twice about invading Ukraine. I think Russia goes, well, the United States is too good of a partner and will absolutely destroy us if we do anything. Right? That's the way it used to be. That's the way it used to be. Nobody trusts the United States anymore. I can't blame them. So if you let Russia take over Ukraine, like, it's going to have pretty devastating consequences to the United States' position in the world, and it is going to affect you at home. Like, it's going to have negative economic consequences and all of these sorts of things, right? Okay. And this is kind of the issue with it in the political sense. Them trusting just means I pay more for taxes. Yeah, you do pay a lot in taxes for money going overseas, but it's kind of a pittance compared to like what we get back in economic prosperity from it. But like, look, from a political policy perspective, it's just a dumb position to take. It's just a straight up dumb position to take. The majority of Americans support Ukraine. The majority of Americans are going to have a hard time going to the ballot box, knowing that the decision that they make is going to mean that people in Ukraine die or are suppressed. They're not going to do it. I'm straight, like, go and look at the polling, guys. This is a toxic position for the Republican Party to take. It is an absolutely toxic position. My take is bad. I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Look. No, I hate it when it does this. Okay. 48% say they favor the U.S. providing weapons to Ukraine, with 29% opposed and 22% saying they're neither in favor nor opposed. Okay, it's 2-1, man. It's 2-1 in the American public. And that's not this just Democrats think this and just Republicans think this sort of a thing, okay? Like, it's a very large portion of Republicans too. There is no way. I think that it will be very, very difficult for you to win an election against an incumbent president with a party that, quite frankly, has at the current time a demographic superiority over you. There's no way you were going to win that with that position. How many were polled in that one? I don't know. I have to go into it. I would think that it would be a few thousand. When I think more important would be, when was this? This was February 15th. I bet you we could probably find better polls. I mean, this is something that's been pulled often, right? Here you go. Here's Gallup on February 6th. 65% of adults prefer that the United States support Ukraine in reclaiming its territory, even if that results in a prolonged conflict. Meanwhile, 31% continue to say they would rather see the U.S. work to end the war quickly, even if this allows Russia to keep its territory. May as well vote for Biden. See, this is why Republicans always lose, right? Because you go and you stake out a terrible position, and then you make that terrible position like life and death. Yes, I would rather lose than see the United States continue to support Ukraine in an unjust war. Okay, then lose. Then lose. I'm not gonna take that tech. And you deserve to lose because they don't hold your principle, right? So here, it's the same issue. Like, be practical, guys. Please, Republicans, be practical, right? All of your principles aren't worth shit if you're never in office. It means nothing. What are your principles worth? I'm sure you probably feel good, but it doesn't help anybody else. You want to do something, you have to be in office. Look, if you get somebody smart in office, maybe they can take an approach to this conflict that's a little bit smarter than the stupid shit that Joe Biden is doing, right? Not everything has to be like all one way or another. You have to go and look at the specific situations, the structure of the system that you're dealing with, and make the optimal choice given the situation that you are. The world does not always conform to what your ideological positions are on things. Yeah, war sucks, but guess what? It happens sometimes. It happens a lot. That's kind of like world history, right? I'm absolutely flabbergasted by this attitude that if we just stop lending to support to Ukraine, that will result in less conflict in the future. No, it won't. If you do that, all that's going to do is just give Russia plenty more reason to try and go after the actual NATO countries after that, because you know that they want to. No money we give them is going to make them win. Well, so number one, we would have to define what does win mean, right? So I do not believe that Russia will overtake Kiev at this point. At this point, I think that overtaking Kiev is like too far for the Russians, right? At best, the Russians will be able to take over the territories that they were, like, remember they kind of scaled the war back and they said these territories we're trying to take over, and then they've been having a problem with that, right? That's like the best case scenario for Russia, okay, in terms of Russia winning. So let's just keep that one in mind, right? If that scenario did happen, then you would have the insurgency, okay, which would not be good for Russia either, right? So, which is probably why I don't think you're gonna. I think it's a part of why I don't think that you're gonna see Kiev fall, right? They're just eating the money? Well, sure they are. It is a lot of money. It's a shit situation. But I would rather spend the money, man. I'm telling you, the alternative is worse. That's not true. I'm completely, listen, I listen to all of the stupid bullshit that the like this is the thing that really bothers me about it, okay? Because I read all of this stuff, right? The Republican Party and especially the Donald Trump far right websites are straight up eating Russian propaganda bullshit, like just absolute complete bullshit, demonstrably false things that the Russians are saying to justify their war. And then people turn around and say you're woefully misinformed when you've been like straight up reading Russian propaganda, right? You remind me of the people who thought we'd win in Afghanistan and Iraq. This is not even comparable, right? This is not even comparable. Sorry, what so all I hear is I don't agree with you. I don't actually hear any actual points of specific things that we're saying that are incorrect, right? Kiev is so are you arguing that Kiev is going to fall and Russia's going to take over the whole country? I think you're wrong. I would put money on you being wrong, in fact. Okay, I will bet you $1,000 that Russia will not take over Kiev before the end of 2025. All right. Are those acceptable terms? Because I mean, I don't want it to be like something else completely different happens 20 years from now, and then it's like, you're right. Okay, so we're gonna give it till the end of 2025. Kiev does not fall. That's my bet. I don't have $10,000 to give you. I can give you 1,000 though. $10,000 would be irresponsible of me. No, yeah, I'm not willing to risk the financial health of my household and my business and so forth to prove somebody wrong about Ukraine, right? The furthermore one I would make, the other bet that we could take is I'm going to bet you that any candidate that takes the position of abandoning Ukraine will lose. Like honestly, I think that it will be difficult for a Republican to win their own primary with that position, let alone the presidency. So if Ron DeSantis becomes the nominee and that's his position, I think he will lose. Like, that's just what the polling says. And that's kind of an issue. Like, it would be kind of a little silly for the entire, like, election to hang on one issue, but it's one of enough emotion behind it and enough public support behind it. I think you can have a really, really difficult time winning the election as president with that position. Well, they wouldn't just be Biden, right? Was Nixon exactly the same as LBJ? I mean, Nixon escalated the war in Vietnam. Did he not? He kind of escalated it in an attempt to withdraw, and then eventually they did withdraw, which was kind of like a bum deal and not very smart, but and that was because of Carter. It was kind of one of those funny things that's similar to this time. It's like one president kind of started the withdrawal, and then the Democrat came in and like completely went through with it in a really dumb way. Right? I don't think we can say right now that we're losing the war. I mean, in a situation like this, it's a lot more complicated than simply winning or losing, isn't it? Right. So what happened was Russia already kind of lost, right? In some respect, the straight up reality is that Russia is probably not going to be able to overtake all of Ukraine, and they're probably not going to be able to take over Kiev. It's not going to happen. It's Russia like just doesn't have the resources. Like realize, okay, they have, dude, think about how much are like resources Russia has dumped into this, man. They've completely fucked themselves for generations now. No matter what, no matter what, this is a loss for Russia, man. I don't think that it was as bad for their economy as it probably should have been. Their ability to be resilient in the face of global sanctions was quite impressive, I must say. Okay, but they're still hosed. Like demographically and everything, they're hosed. This was a really dumb. Yeah, we'll stream regard. It was a really dumb decision by Putin, right? So in that respect, I say that it's a win. And I think that if Kiev stays up, I'd still call that a win, right? But now we're just kind of arguing over like how much of a win or a loss will it be, and it's looking more and more likely that Russia could overtake the particular areas that they're looking for and then broker some sort of a peace deal or something. At this point, I think that's probably the most likely situation. Because look, number one, they already tried invading Kiev and it was a disaster, right? And you're going to have the same problems if they try and do a second wave of that. And if they do try and do a second wave of that, then probably support for Ukraine among Western nations and the aid that they give them just increases. Is pushing Russia towards China, Iran a win for the USA? I would say no, it's not. But I don't see how you think that letting Russia overtake Ukraine somehow results in a better situation than that, right? I mean, I think the larger point that I was trying to make at the beginning was the fact that Russia even attacked in the first place was a big failure, right? It really should have been the situation that Russia would think that they're absolutely nuts to try and invade Ukraine, right? You know, I've tested Bookmap, but I just really don't find it a compelling platform, man. The things that everybody oohs and ahs about, I'm just kind of like, ugh, whatever. Okay, we do need to pull up the ECB. Okay, so you're bringing up some of these things that kind of were lead-ups to the Ukraine conflict, but I fail to see how any of that justifies a foreign country invading Ukraine, right? So I reject any argument that is based on this idea that like Russia owns Ukraine or something. Like that it's supposed to be some sort of vassal state or something. That Ukraine getting closer to NATO justifies them being able to do whatever they want. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's a stupid argument. Okay, well then we gotta find the ECB here. ECB. They're still taking pictures. So it's like when people say like, what would the United States do if Mexico started to become closer to China or something like that? I'll tell you what, nothing. Well, they would make sure that they're good enough that Mexico doesn't want to make a deal with China that pits them against the United States, right? But they're their own country; they can do what they want. Many nations has the U.S. invaded? I don't know. Many.
Connected on screen.
I mean, if you want, we can talk about specific interventions that the United States has made and discuss whether or not they were justified. But that really has nothing to do with whether or not Russia should be allowed to invade Ukraine without consequences, and whether or not Western countries should support Ukraine in their fight against Russia.
Inflation is projected to remain too high for too long.
Oh, that's
The Governing Council
the start of her speech, I say, was pretty hawkish right there, man.
ECB interest rates
Let me stop the music.
points in line with our determination to ensure the timely return of inflation to our 2% medium-term target. The elevated level of uncertainty reinforces the importance of a data-dependent approach to our policy rate decisions, which will be determined by our assessment of the inflation outlook in light of the incoming economic and financial data, the dynamics of underlying inflation, and the strength of monetary policy transmission. We are monitoring current market tensions closely and stand ready to respond as necessary to preserve price stability.
Well, so price is coming down, but not
in the
too
euro.
aggressively yet.
The euro area banking sector is resilient with strong capital and liquidity positions. In any case, our policy toolkit is fully equipped to provide liquidity support to the euro area financial system if needed, and to preserve the smooth transmission of monetary policy. The new ECB staff macroeconomic projections were finalized in early March, before the recent emergence of financial market tensions. As such, these tensions imply additional uncertainty around the baseline assessments of inflation and growth. Prior to these latest developments, the baseline path for headline inflation had already been revised down, mainly owing to a smaller contribution from energy prices than previously expected. ECB staff now sees inflation averaging 5.3% in 23, 2.9% in 24, and 2.1% in 25. At the same time, underlying price pressures remain strong. Inflation, excluding energy and food, continued to increase in February, and ECB staff expects...
No, it's he who lives in glass houses should not throw stones. It's not. It's just a whataboutism, right? Has nothing to do with the current conflict, right? What you're doing is you don't have a good argument, so you're trying to change the discussion to, well, the United States isn't so great. Okay, maybe they've done things in the past. It means absolutely nothing to what is the correct policy response in this particular situation.
Tighter monetary policy increasingly dampens demand. The baseline projections for growth in 23 have been revised up to an average of 1% as a result of both the decline in energy prices and the economy's greater resilience to the challenging international environment. ECB staff then expect growth to pick up further to 1.6% in both 24 and 25, underpinned by a robust labour market, improving confidence.
Okay, it's relevant if past similar policy decisions have yielded nothing, but that's not the case. So one is the situations that you're possibly referring to are a very different situation from what's going on in Ukraine. And two, they have not all necessarily yielded nothing.
That is available on our website. I will now outline in more details how we see the economy and inflation developing, and will then explain our assessment of financial...
Listen, guys, if you want to beat me in an argument, because I know I have the microphone and everything, so that kind of makes it hard, but you're going to have to come up with a lot better shit than that. Just insulting me or, you know, making these kinds of roundabout arguments is not going to work. Right? You're going to have to come up with an actual active reason to believe that this particular policy would result in a better outcome than this particular policy. And anything that's not related to that particular subject is kind of just a distraction from the argument. Right?
Under the baseline,
right. If that's what you turn to, that's kind of sign that you've been brainwashed. Frankly.
Industrial production should pick up as supply conditions improve further. Confidence continues to recover.
We should watch the ECB. You're right.
Work off large order backlogs. Rising wages and...
I don't know if she's really saying anything too important, though, to be honest with you. I kind of feel like that it's already baked in now.
Many households.
We just kind of see how far the market goes with it. Right now, it's having a hard time getting below that open.
Moreover, the labour market remains strong, despite the weakening of economic activity. Employment grew by 0.3% in the fourth quarter of 22, and the unemployment rate stayed at its historical low of 6.6% in January 23. Government measures to shield the economy from the impact of high energy prices should be temporary, targeted, and tailored to preserving incentives to consume less energy. As energy prices fall and risks around the energy supply recede, it is important to start rolling back these measures promptly and in a concerted manner. Measures falling short of these principles are likely to drive up medium-term inflation pressures, which would call for a stronger monetary policy response. Moreover, in line with the EU's economic governance framework, and as stated in the European Commission's guidance of March 8, 23, fiscal policies should be oriented towards making our economy more productive and gradually bringing down high public debt. Policies to enhance the euro area's supply capacity, especially in the energy sector, can help reduce price pressures in the medium term. To that end, governments should swiftly implement their investment and structural reform plans under the Next Generation EU programme. The reform of the EU's economic governance framework should be concluded rapidly. Let's look at inflation. Inflation edged down to 8.5% in February. The decline resulted from a renewed sharp drop in energy prices. By contrast, food price inflation increased further to 15%, with the past surge in the cost of energy and of other inputs for food.
Well, so the main thing that she's said so far, in my opinion, is that the ECB is still concerned about inflation. Even though they are watching the financial situation closely, they still increased
February, and other
50 basis points.
underlying inflation have also
Now, kind of sorting out what this actually means for the market is proving to be a little bit nuanced, because the general view among the financial markets is that the United States has a more serious problem than Europe does,
which rose to 4.8%.
which is perhaps why the market is not like zeroing in on the Federal Reserve will still raise 25 or 50 basis points.
Pent-up demand from the reopening of the economy and rising wages. Wage pressures have strengthened on the back of robust labor markets.
Or tan. She probably does have a spray on tan, don't you think? Or maybe she's... I've never seen her pale. Maybe she's just... Maybe that's just her skin. I don't know.
Were able to raise their profit.
Telling you, everybody is pale this winter, man. Everybody's just been inside the whole time.
And resurgent demand. At the same time, most measures of longer-term inflation expectations currently stand at around 2%, although they warrant continued monitoring,
Trump in the same room would lie to the
especially in
universe.
light of recent volatility in market-based inflation expectations. Moving to the risk assessment now. Risks to the outlook for economic growth are tilted to
It super bothers me that when they put Trump on TV, they changed the gamma correction on it to make him look more
broader
orange.
credit conditions more strongly
Oh my
than
gosh.
expected and dampen confidence. Russia's unjustified war against Ukraine and its people continues to be a
Like,
significant downside risk.
I understand that sometimes,
Again, push up the cost of energy.
because I do this with streaming, you know, sometimes there are some situations where you kind of need to adjust things a little bit. But when you know that that's kind of the thing,
Than expected.
and then you still make him look orange is kind of...
Companies could adapt more quickly
Jeez.
to the challenging
Oh,
internal
they totally do that. They totally, especially MSNBC, they always make him look
could support
extremely orange.
higher growth than currently expected. The upside risks to inflation include existing pipeline pressures that could still send retail prices even higher than expected in the near term.
So, do you remember that first speech that Joe Biden did, where like the background is red and everything else like that?
Increases in wages
Well,
margins could
the Democrats all complained that the TV made Biden look more evil than, you know,
moreover, a stronger than expected
and they were claiming that they changed the gamma. So like if you go in and you can use like white balance tools
and foreign
to see like why did they color grade it the way that they did,
include
and you can kind of see that it did make it a little bit more red, but that was just because the lighting was so bad in the scene,
falling energy prices could translate into reduced
and that was looked a lot better than like what their alternative choice was.
including owing to a stronger deceleration of bank credit or
I made a TikTok about that. That was a long time ago.
monetary policy,
That was like over a year ago, wasn't it?
lower price pressures than currently anticipated, especially over the medium term. So let's look at financial and market conditions.
So I don't know though. There's a lot of Frenchies that are
Rose
pretty tan, right?
in the weeks following our last meeting. But the increase has strongly reversed over recent days in a context of severe financial market tensions.
You got some good downside, but it didn't fill me.
Has become more expensive. credit to firms has weakened further, owing to lower demand and tighter credit supply conditions. Household borrowing has become more expensive as well, especially owing to higher mortgage rates.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and...
And the resultant decline in demand, along with tighter
I'm going to
credit
try and
standards,
rebase my position here.
have led to a further
Well, that's
slowdown
not
in
helping.
the growth of loans to households. And these weaker loan dynamics, money growth has slowed sharply, driven by its most liquid component. So summing up, inflation is projected to remain too high for too long. Therefore, the Governing Council today decided to increase the 3 key ECB interest rates by 50 basis points, in line with our determination to ensure the timely return of inflation to our...
She is having a really long opening statement. It's been almost 15 minutes.
Reinforces the importance of a data-dependent approach to our policy rate decisions, which will be determined by our assessment of inflation outlook in light of the incoming economic and financial data, the dynamics of underlying inflation, and the strength of monetary policy transmission. We are monitoring current market tensions closely and stand ready to respond as necessary to preserve price stability and financial stability in the euro area. In any case, we stand ready to adjust all of our instruments within our mandate to ensure that inflation returns to our medium-term target and to preserve the smooth functioning of monetary policy transmission. We now stand ready to take your questions.
Okay.
Thank you, President Lagarde. And the first question goes to Alex Weber of Bloomberg News. Alex, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I was wondering, could you explain a little bit how you see the path for interest rates ahead? I mean, until a few days ago, it seemed pretty clear that interest rates would have to rise further after this meeting, but you didn't give any guidance in the statement. Does this mean it could be that we've already reached the peak in interest rates? And then secondly, regarding the banking sector more broadly, a lot of people have drawn parallels to between what happened at Credit Suisse and Silicon Valley Bank and failures we've seen at the last financial crisis like Bear Stearns. Do you see any risks that we're on the verge of a systemic crisis like in 2008?
Thank you very much for your question.
Okay, well, 18's not terrible.
I would call your attention to one particular paragraph, which is the first one in our monetary policy statement.
It's a lot better than 16 at least.
I'm trying to dissect for you the mechanism of our reaction function. And this is really the best guidance that we can provide. And it is, number one, the assessment of the inflation outlook in light of the incoming economic and financial data. Number two, the dynamics of underlying inflation. And number three, the strength of our monetary policy transmission. So that's brand new. These 3 components, we never discuss them, we never let them out, and they are clearly identified as the 3 elements that will be taken into account to determine our reaction function going forward. Second point. If our baseline was to persist, when the uncertainty...
Kind of wondering if I played that a little bit wrong because...
We know that we have a lot more ground to cover.
I was doing 3 contracts and maybe I should have only taken 2 off.
But it's a big caveat. If our baseline was...
So I'd like to make, 1,000 if this breaks, but it would really have to go to make 1,000, right?
The projection that were decided by staff, sorry, not decided, but determined by staff, are based on data and assessment of the situation with a cutoff date. And that
so if they started at 7:45, that means they're going to go almost till the end of this stream. We can still talk.
For the euro area macroeconomic projections. Now, since
You better not get closed caption with live.
a lot obviously has developed.
Like the real takeaway that you're supposed to get from the whole argument over Ukraine, right? is what happened there was you guys just proved my point, right? Joe Biden stands an extremely strong chance of winning the next election because Republicans insist on taking unpopular positions.
So there is a level of uncertainty that has been...
That was the point, right?
...as a result of that. And that is the reason why we reinforce the...
Pretty cool to see you at yeah, any of those podcasts that wanted to have me on, I would totally do it.
With a clear map of the reaction function that we will have in the future. So it is not possible at this point in time.
And I guess part of me arguing in favor of continuing the Ukraine war is kind of to show you how why it's such an unpopular opinion.
At this point in time, you know, what the path will...
I know that Republicans think that we should just get out. There's a lot of Republicans that think that. Conservatives are going to be tend to think that, but it's like really is a toxic position. And when I say toxic, I mean it's a position that you take that makes it difficult to get elected.
Read for you one more time what is in the second paragraph this time of our monetary policy statement, which is that we are monitoring current market tensions closely. We stand ready to respond as necessary to preserve price stability and financial stability in the euro area. And given the reforms that have taken place, and I was around in 2008, so I have clear recollection of what happened and what we had to do.
Okay.
We did reform the framework. We did agree on Basel III. We did increase...
This sure is ranging across a wide range. Do you think it's going to break one way or the other, or is it just going to continue to do this while she's talking?
Much stronger position than where it was back in 2008. Added to which, if it was needed, we do have the tools, we do have the facilities that are available. And we also have...
This is another one of those, maybe I shouldn't be doing this because even though it's on SIM, it might give somebody ideas that they should do this sort of thing while the ECB is talking, and it's probably not the best trade.
Our staff, because as you can imagine...
I think I might get away with it, but you just got to realize that what we're doing right here has a really, really skewed risk-reward.
That they can also exercise creativity in very short order, in case it is needed to respond to what would be a liquidity crisis, if there was such a thing. But this is not what we are seeing. Thank you.
Thank you, President Lagarde. And the next question goes to, I'm now turning to remote participants, to Balazs Korani of Reuters. Balazs, please, over to you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for taking my questions. President Lagarde, could you unpack for me what you mean a lot more ground to cover?
Sorry, I missed the first part of your question. Balazs, can you repeat the first part? I missed it.
Yes. I said, could you please unpack for me your statement that there might be a lot more ground to cover should the baseline prevail? What does that mean? Especially given that prior to this meeting, almost all governing council members, including Philip Lane, has said that more rate hikes will likely be needed beyond March. So are you walking back on that commitment? Or is the ECB's inflation fighting stamina waning? Are you giving up on inflation? The second question I have is the usual one, I'm sorry. What other options were being discussed in the meeting today? What were the alternatives that policymakers were supporting?
Thank you for your question. We are not waning on our commitment to fight inflation, and we are determined to return inflation back to 2% target in the medium term. That should not be doubted. The determination is intact, and
did not get Phil. I hate that.
We will cover the ground. The pace that we will take will be entirely data.
So I'm thinking, if I had gotten to Phil, would I be loading up again?
On this specific occasion,
I think no.
Given the level of uncertainty that has been significantly increased as a result of the most recent financial tensions and developments, given that level of uncertainty, it is better to make the decision that we believe is a robust decision with our 50 basis points increase, and then see what the data tell us.
I don't think I've ever
and
seen
what
this
next
before.
assessment we make on the basis of that data. But let me reassure
Look
you,
at how big of a mess this has
we are
become.
determined to fight inflation and return it to
We're just crossing between the average market maker positions over and over again.
data-dependent, and they will function on the basis of these three parameters that I have just mentioned to illustrate what our reaction function is. You had a second question, which you said was a repeat of previous questions, which I think had to do with any other options, what has happened behind those closed doors, and I fully appreciate the question. I have to tell you that the Executive Board proposed that option which is described in the monetary policy statement, and that no other option was proposed. I can also tell you that the decision was adopted by a very large majority, with 3 or 4 that did not support the decision, not in its principle, because they were ready to go for that decision, but they were keen to probably give a bit more time to see how the situation unfolds and what additional data we can collect. But otherwise, it was a very large majority decision. And I would say taken in rather record time. Thank you.
Thank you, President Lagarde. I would like to now turn to Kolja Ruzio of the German weekly Die Zeit. Kolja, please.
I feel like that the guys at the ECB have a closer relationship with their reporters than the Federal Reserve does.
Isn't there a conflict
Do you get that impression?
between price stability and financial stability? And to what extent do you consider slowing down the pace of rate hikes because of financial stability? Do you have to slower down perhaps because of financial stability? That is my first question. And the second, were you surprised by the financial problems we see now in the US and we saw last year in the pension funds in the UK? Was this a surprise, or is it something which was expected perhaps by monetary policy experts?
Oh boy, who would call me this time
Let
of
me
day?
be
It's
pretty
gonna be
clear on
spam.
that point as well. I believe that there is no trade-off between price stability and financial stability. And I think that, if anything, with this decision,
Somebody sold the political roles
we are addressing
to a spammer,
price stability issue,
like the voting rolls to a spammer. So I get spam at
rate
all
by
times
50
of day,
basis
man.
points, which is what we had intended, and because inflation is projected to remain way above our target and for too long. And separate from that, we also are monitoring market tensions. We stand ready to provide any kind of additional facilities if needed. We do have extensive facilities, more so, by the way, than the Fed in terms of size of the collateral pools and facilities. And we can do more if necessary. We have demonstrated that in the times of PEP.
Because it's newer, so their journalists are not that. I don't know.
In the PEP
I don't know.
times, whether it is on the pool of collaterals, whether it's on the haircuts, whether it's on all issues, that can be reactivated like that. And we always stand ready to use them again. So, euro liquidity is perfectly addressed. No issue on that front. So there's no trade-off. We have to do our job. This is primary.
She says there's no trade-off. That I'm surprised the market is not pushing down more. I mean, this seems like an incredibly hawkish.
That will determine our reaction function. You find the word financial, if you look carefully. You have assessment of the inflation outlook in light of the incoming economic and financial data. So the financial issues are captured in order to assess inflation. So there is no trade-off. We have financial stability very much as part of our radar screen and the tools that we can deploy, but there is no trade-off between the two. Did you want to add to that, Vice President?
Well, first of all, good afternoon. Well, from a financial stability standpoint, and the perspective is quite clear. If you look at the industry as a whole, as the President has indicated before, the situation of the European banks, they are resilient. Capital is much higher than it was 10, 15 years ago, before the global financial crisis. The liquidity position of the European banks is robust. If you look at the liquidity ratios, on average, they are clearly above the minimum requirements and even the pre-pandemic levels. And even if you look at the composition of these liquidity buffers, they are high quality, very high liquidity assets. So in that respect, the composition is quite positive. And finally, there is something that I think that is relevant, is the increase in interest rates, is positive in terms of the margins of the European banks. And this improvement in terms of profitability more than offsets potential losses in fixed income portfolios. Looking at the exposure, for instance, to Credit Suisse, they are quite limited.
Watch Christine Lagarde explains why she hiked 50 basis points as Credit Suisse fights for its life. Shall we pull that up?
That exposure. And finally, as the President has indicated, we have a toolkit of instruments just in case that are needed in order to deliver liquidity.
Thank you, Vice President. And now the next question for Martin Arnold of the Financial Times. Martin, please.
Hello, President Lagarde. Could you just explore a bit more this potential for a trade-off between financial stability and price stability? Could you foresee a situation where, given the outlook for inflation, you need to raise rates further?
Let's do a 5-minute chart.
That could trigger a financial crisis or make a financial stress worse. Second question is that given that you've said the underlying inflation is going to be one.
Do you find trading stocks easier than futures like the ES? I think that trading stocks is in many respects, a completely different game.
Indicators of underlying inflation, which you're not seeing at the moment.
So finding
stop raising rates. Thank you.
Situations where you can be the informed trader in an individual stock is really hard.
The two questions. On the first one, as I said earlier,
but you can pick any stock that you want. So it kind of becomes more a deal of looking for a certain kind of situation and then looking at all of the different instruments and
for the moment, interest rate,
using a screener to find when that situation happens. So it's a different
facilities that we have available.
I think that in many respects the order flow is clear, yes.
That is needed in order to address financial stability issues. So
it looks to me like the futures are extremely efficient compared to the stocks in order flow. And that there appears to be a little bit more edge, a little bit more easily read kind of situations in the stocks compared to the futures. Like right now in the futures,
of inflation. So through that assessment,
the 10-year is selling, the 30-year and the 5-year are buying.
We actually take into account
overall we're moving up, the 30-year like really extended there.
Financing, financial cost, terms and conditions, and the financing of
everything is kind of correlated with the ES, that's true. But that's it's difficult to get it edged just on the ES.
Had to do, if I recall, with my second. Sorry, wait a minute. I need to get back to my second item. Yeah, because you did refer to.
Well, here's break of the highs.
The first one that we mentioned is the assessment of inflation outlook in light of economic and financial data, and it needs to be confirmed by the underlying component of inflation. And on that front, we are again going to be data dependent. And it is obvious that as long as we see underlying component of inflation going up.
Futures are the foundation of money?
Our fight against inflation. So we will need to receive confirmation on the underlying component of inflation, we will need to receive confirmation that we are heading in the direction.
I don't know, Khulud. I really haven't been too impressed with the code that I get out of ChatGPT.
Improvement in certain areas, but
It's still faster for me to write the code myself.
And we know that whether you look at core, which is one of the components of the underlying inflation.
Did you see the Microsoft thing the other day, though? Or was it Google? Sorry, it was Google. Google the other day, they have like AIs that like you can draw a picture and it will create the user interface for you in HTML.
The inflation outlook that we have.
Thank you, President. And the next question goes to Isabella Bufacchi of Il Sole 24 Ore. Isabella, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. Good afternoon. My question is...
Good to see you in real life, not on screen.
Thank you. My question is on...
That was a dangerous thing for LaGuardia to say. What if she really didn't want to be there because she's still scared of the pandemic? I don't know.
The 3 points that you said about explaining your reaction function. So one of them is the monetary policy transmission, and also at the end of your decisions.
There's another story on Zero Hedge that's if it looks like a bailout and walks like a bailout, it's probably a bailout. And yesterday I made a TikTok about this that like the leftists really flip out if you call it a bailout.
So we think about TPI when we hear about this. I'd like to know whether you think that TPI can be used when banking tensions start to jeopardize the transmission of monetary policy. And whether in your fully equipped toolkit, you could also consider to adjust the pace of the reduction of the holdings of securities under the asset purchase program, so the QT.
First of all, on monetary policy transmission, I will be giving a speech soon about monetary policy transmission and about the first leg of monetary policy transmission and the second leg of monetary policy transmission. All I can say at this point in time is that we're beginning to see transmission of our monetary policy through the credit channel. And if you look at rates, if you look at terms and conditions, if you look at the impact that it has on the demand of financing on the part of both corporates and households, we are beginning to see transmission.
The Fed should not bail out investors.
Which is you know what we.
It's usually not investors that need the bailing out. That's true.
TPI transmission policy instrument was precisely designed to make sure
I would define that what's happening is as a bailout.
Travel and move.
Like my take is, whenever there's a financial bailout,
member states.
Whenever there's a financial crisis, there's a bailout.
And that would be caused by factors that had nothing to do with the fundamentals.
And the Federal Reserve is providing assistance to these financial institutions that would be going out of business if the Federal Reserve had not acted. That, to me, is a bailout.
Tensions would qualify in that respect, but it could well be the case. I'm advancing a little bit because we did not discuss that at all, and it's something that would need to be debated with the Governing Council. Nor did we decide anything on the partial reinvestment under the APP. That's a principle that we decided back at our February meeting, which has been in place.
Why did you change your layout with the chart above each ladder?
In a regular...
You're talking about like the old one? Because the charts weren't useful.
Turning back to our remote participants, I would like now to give the floor to Jean-Philippe Lacour of Agence France Presse, AFP. Jean-Philippe.
Yeah, it just wasn't useful.
Yes, now you can hear me and see me, I hope.
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, Madame la Présidente. One question on this underlying...
I think that when we changed it, though, was when we started trading E-minis, right? And we had to create all of this room for the stuff that we needed to watch to trade E-minis.
Components, because the profit margin seems to develop well. And that could maybe put some questions on the narrative of the ECB, very focused on the risk, either on the wage price loop. And I would like to hear what you think about this contribution of corporate profits to inflation. And a second question, if I may, Mr. Guindos, you are quoted that some banks may be vulnerable. You would have told this to ministers briefed earlier this week. I don't.
In the end, it doesn't matter because in the next crisis, banks will do something else that is reckless and stupid, and taxpayers are paying anyways.
Confirm or not?
Well, this is where I think that people are being lied to.
And
They keep being told that the reason this happens is because the banks did something bad, and if we just had proper regulation that prevented the banks from ever doing anything bad, that financial crises would never happen, and that's just absolute bullshit.
margins.
What tends to happen is actually there's a group of banks, a group of players that all fall victim to the same financial problem, and then they find the one among that group that was the most irresponsible and let them take the fall. That's what actually happens, right?
With constrained supply.
But the reality is that you can't regulate this problem away. It's something that is inherent in the economic system, that you will have these shocks that are endemic to the system itself.
To discuss in depth various matters, one of which was actually the various components that fuel underlying inflation, and we
right. It's a. I feel so political today. I don't know why, but to me, it's a lie that Democrats tell you to try and continue to justify their overbearance on the financial system.
During my last press conference.
Right. They do all of this crazy stuff. They invent all of these regulations, and they continue to grow government larger and larger and larger. And then we still have these problems. So how do they justify still being in power? Well, we just haven't punished all of the evil corporations enough yet. And if we had enough power, then this would never happen. It's bullshit. It will always happen. It will always happen. It's inherent in the system.
What we are concerned about is
they were investing in treasuries. I wouldn't call that risky. That's a misnomer. So investing in bonds is not risk-free
burden sharing aspect
unless you hold them to maturity.
At corporate level, and it's certainly something that
right. And if you're investing money that you might need in the future,
the risk of second round effect
right.
in particular.
The treasuries doesn't have the counterparty risk, like you are going to get paid back.
Point to you the sentence which is in the second
paragraph. But what you're saying, it's not a crazy risk, is like
paragraphs matter.
What they did was stupid. What they did was stupid, right? What they did was they went into the longest dated maturities, making a bet that interest rates would stay low. Even when they were being told by everything that the Federal Reserve says that that's not what's going to happen.
As you can imagine,
right?
I remember what I told.
Like, think about it. At this time last year, we were already like pushing interest rates were pushing significantly higher and so on and so forth. Why didn't they make this move a year ago? Right?
Main components of the liquidity buffer. Limited exposure to the ECB.
And they didn't. They could have hedged it. They could have done all of these different things that they didn't do. They could have gone into shorter term maturities, right?
Of the U.S. and simultaneously that
they really did do something that I think is dumb, right?
Banking industry in Europe is resilient.
But again, my point was like, look. Silicon Valley was dumb, but guess what? There's a whole bunch of other regional banks that are suffering from the same issues that were not dumb, that are just suffering because they're small regional banks, and interest rates are going up.
By the Federal Reserve, accepting bonds like at par instead of market value, or would it face legal constraints? And I have a second question, if I may. You have visited Spain recently.
I've been kind of testing people, like arguing with them on Reddit and so forth about these things. Maybe that's why I'm so argumentative today. But I think I've kind of settled on the correct way to argue about this issue, is that
until TLT.
None of the things that politicians are talking about would have prevented Credit Suisse. Right? Credit Suisse is a systemically important bank. It's subject to all the rules, and it's still,
Thank you for your two
with like one foot in the grave.
When I say that I have full confidence in staff creativity, what I mean is that I have seen them in action. They've been there, they've done it. And on the occasion of COVID, for instance, they were able in very short order to put together programs that proved extremely efficient in order to resist.
How can you be so consistent in streaming? I don't know. How can I not be?
Tools exist. They are strong, they are powerful, and they can be reactivated anytime. We always stand
With
ready.
Reddit. There's a lot of things I don't like about Reddit, but there's no replacement.
Are probably broader and more accessible.
Serves an important part in the internet social media ecosystem, and it's a very sad that it's been dominated so heavily by
alternatives,
the political ideology that it is.
If it was needed at some point in time, of course, I know staff will stand up to the occasion and will also look at what can be done.
What is Reddit?
And in accordance with the rules of the treaty under which we are governed.
Turns people into know-it-all assholes. No. I'm not a know-it-all asshole because I read Reddit. I'm a know-it-all asshole because I literally spend like 6 hours of my day just reading news on the internet. That's where I like. This is where you got to understand. I read every day, and I mean literally every day. I read everything that I come across and I find interesting on Reddit. I read everything that I come across on on Patriots.win, everything on Zero Hedge and CNBC. And I even still go to some of the political websites like Politico, The Hill. I get a lot of, I don't ever directly go to the Huffington Post, but I read a lot of the Huffington Post from
I would like to
Reddit.
This point about the incoming economic and financial data. I mean, in the past meetings, we've heard a lot about what the economic data is.
I don't go to Drudge anymore.
Detail a little more.
That
you'll be watching, and
I think that Matt Judge kind of jumped the shark and that their content isn't very good.
And then my second question is, how much has the volatility we've
seen? When he kind of turned on Donald Trump and started pushing BS, I was like, this website's dumb.
The interest rate decision, but the choice.
You aren't the only one. I mean, it's a small minority.
Thank you.
I like your last word, clearly. This is something that we are longing for, clarity. Because
But part of the reason I am the way that I am is because my whole day is just spent watching people on Reddit and other websites say things that I know are demonstrably false, right?
That pre-existed, but that has certainly been amplified.
And then when we come in and we want to talk about something like the Ukraine war, everybody kind of defaults to their same kind of things. Well, you only believe that because you've been propagandized, blah, blah, blah. Listen, I read all of the propaganda from everybody. I've read the Russian propaganda. I've read the U.S. propaganda. I also follow some guys that are like pretty deep into like the military side of things and are like really into the field reports. I feel like I'm not an expert like them. I wish that I was, but I have a pretty good handle on what's going on over there in that conflict. That's why I can come in and say pretty confidently that the Russia best case scenario for Russia is that they take over the current areas that they're battling over.
What financial data do we look at? We are particularly concerned, obviously.
What's the conclusion on which issue?
So we look very carefully using...
You still trust the experts? Well, the reason that I trust experts is because the people that I follow are people that actually present empirical evidence. And I can then go and check their empirical evidence, right?
Whether the financial conditions are tightening.
I don't just take people's word for it.
Tightening of financial conditions will then have on the economy. Those are the key components that we assess to determine our monetary policy transmission.
Thank you, President.
See, the philosophy of never trust the experts is just as stupid as always trust the experts, right?
Tom, please.
Don't. Use empirical evidence.
Tom, can you hear?
Empirical evidence is always empirical in the moment.
This does not seem to be the case. Then I would give the next question to Eric Albert of Le Monde, also connected via video call. Eric, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much.
No, that was never the case.
Parallels done with 2008. Obviously, the banks are in different.
Where COVID killed 95% of people that caught it. No, like even back in December, it was always like a sub 1% number, right? It was always like 0.04% or something, right?
First thing, and the second question is about the transmission of monetary policy. It takes a long time for interest rate hikes to go through the economy.
There was a lot of people on ventilators in the beginning when it was in Italy, though, weren't there? But I think that part of that was because they were prone to put people on the ventilators, and they kind of started to realize that putting people on preemptively putting people on the ventilator wasn't a good idea.
As you said yourself, the banks are in a completely different.
We're back to the peer review decision making, yeah.
And crises are never exactly the same.
So basically turned in. Yeah, it's basically a death sentence. I'm sure there are some people that have been saved from it, but from the information that I remember, you gotta realize we're talking about such, you gather so much information you can't remember it all, right? But my recollection was that they found that putting people on the ventilators basically was a death sentence, and that you wanted to avoid doing that. You didn't want to do it unless it was absolutely necessary.
I've noticed, I'm sure.
I've never been very agreeable.
Very precisely.
I never have been.
As to the future, we would be data dependent, and that I think is predicated on the fact that
I'm data dependent, like Miss Lagarde here, Mrs.
assessment
Lagarde.
Once the financial tensions on the markets abate.
Where are you? I think that I'm as unagreeable as possible. Well, I'm probably not the most disagreeable person in the world, but I'm pretty much like maxed out on that stat. It was like when I was up in heaven determining my person, God was determining my personality attributes or whatever, and he's like, okay, agreeableness, negative 50.
16 basis points, depending on whether you look at corporates or households, increase in the
agreeable isn't fun.
That are offered, and a significant tightening on the part of the banks that are probably assessing and reassessing the risks.
No, I think that what it is that you generate certain brain pathways, and the brain doesn't want to deviate from those.
Good transmission of monetary.
And I do not modify my position based on the social situation, right? Your frontal cortex will say, "Oh, everybody thinks this. Maybe I'm wrong."
If you consider
I don't do that. Like that. That
monetary policy back in December
thought will cross my consciousness, but I just immediately dismiss it. Like it's kind of like in the background, and it's like really, really faint, and I just kind of ignore it.
Demand that remains to be seen, and how much more does it need to be dampened in order to meet the objectives that.
Oh, it's totally an ADHD thing.
Medium-term target to be seen. We are data dependent. We're going to really.
Because it's not that the prefrontal cortex lacks links or doesn't work. It's that it requires a stronger signal to come out into action.
Upon, as well.
And so the signal like gets sent, and it's not loud enough, and so it has to be sent stronger.
Thank you, Madame Lagarde. Let's try again with Tom Fairless of the Wall Street Journal. Tom, can you connect?
Well, I'd say that this short not working out today.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks so much for taking my question. I suppose the first question is, we've started to see these signs of weakness in financial markets, and
needed more.
I haven't taken that as a reason to.
But I'm not always in the majority on things.
In what's happening, it's something that we haven't seen for a while, and that has reminiscent. It kind of brings back memories of
like here's the thing, we were talking about politics, right? Okay.
I mean, it's just
you've got to go back to
kind of think twice about future rate increases. Do you think with this phrase?
You got to go back to systems. Systems are difficult to understand, right? our heuristics and so forth that we use, like our frontal cortex use, aren't sufficient and aren't very good at those kinds of problems. And those more detailed kind of slower systems, you can't hold enough information to see the whole system and look through all that. So you kind of have to build systems to help you understand the system, right?
Thank you very much
and
for your 2 questions.
So you're going to always find these situations where you might understand something better than the public does and know a policy position better than the public does, but it's against the grain. The public doesn't want to hear it, right? So how do you deal with that situation? And the conservative approach to this is die a martyr.
Business as usual.
That's the Republican approach to it. And it's a stupid approach because what ends up happening is you never end up having any kind of impact, right?
Is it a US?
So my approach is to understand that you're fighting an uphill battle and pick and choose the battles that you choose and in a way so that you can still get elected.
You know, there have been
That's what smart politicians have to do.
disagreement as to
Right? On stream, I can come and I can argue with you guys about anything that you want because I don't care. Because if the stream becomes less popular because I take a position that people don't like, then that's fine. Because I'm not necessarily looking to become the largest streamer, right? It's just to provide useful information. And if the people that don't want the useful information because it offends their sensibilities aren't the people that I want around anyways, right? Okay, but if I was running for office, we'd be more careful about it, right? So for the Ukraine issue is I think a really good example because the public support for Ukraine is overwhelming.
And
you're not going to get elected with that position. You're just not.
Mismatch between the assets and the liabilities.
You know, people who are using iceberg. Well, I mean, lots of people look at iceberg orders, but it's pretty difficult to be profitable just from the icebergs. You just agreed to not be agreeable.
The last question today goes to Leonidas Exousides of Handelsblatt. Leonidas, please.
Power is all they want. They don't want the change they talk about to get the power. Oh, well, that might be true of some people, but
did you discuss
okay, so
an increase in the
if that was true, how would we prove that?
When could this increase start? Thank you.
I don't know. We've had a lot of instances where we've heard what people in power really think, and it was not very favorable to them, was it?
Thank you so much.
That especially in the UK, right?
Our next press conference is on the 4th.
Oh, I'm so glad this is done with. But they're buying afterwards. I'm shocked. I'm shocked. Make them lose power. But I think that it may be a case. It's more likely to be the case that you're getting like a massive selection bias in here, right? So there are existing power structures, right? And you don't get into power if you don't support those existing power structures. That's just the way it is in any kind of human system, right? The advantage of democracy is that the people are still like the largest power base, right? And so you have to do the things that are good for the country as a whole and not just for like one person, like it is in some dictator countries or countries where it's like oil, you know. Some of these countries that are dependent on oil, it's basically like there's that one oil company and they're supreme, and then and then everything else is irrelevant, right? Whereas if you have democracy, you always still have to contend with the people, right? So politicians will always tend to be along a certain track, right? But that's what I'm saying is that if you're a person that wants to make actual positive change, you have to play the game. right? If you come in and say, I'm not going to participate because they're not going to do what I want them to do, you've already decided that you're going to lose, then you're never going to have any impact, right? You're just essentially giving up. And the reality is that one person, if they're good at the game, the political game that is, can have a tremendous amount of impact, can completely flip an issue around, right? But if you come in and you immediately tack out like a super unpopular position that prevents you from even being looked at in the first place, right? And that's the issue. So like, look at it here with Republicans. If in 2024, Republicans had a majority in the House, majority in the Senate, and Republican president, and they actually had a good plan about what they were going to do, I'm not so sure that Donald Trump had the best plan. I mean, it was a good try, but it didn't end up working, and there was some problems with it because they still were going against certain existing power structures, okay? So he didn't play that part of the game very well. But if we had all of that, Republicans could make a big difference on a host of issues, especially all of these things that everybody's going crazy about, you know, like some of these woke things and some of these other cultural issues that are just absolutely toxic to the country, right? But guess what? They're saying, I would rather complain about bailouts and let the financial system die, and I would rather let everybody in Ukraine feed them to the wolves than be in power. That's what they're really saying, is I care about those two issues more than I care about being elected, right? Like, when you know that the public opinion is against you, you don't put that issue forefront and center in front of everybody's face and then try and battle them about it, right? Like Ron DeSantis is right now. Like it really, like before this week, I was like, okay, Ron DeSantis is looking like a strong contender. He could do really well. If he beats Donald Trump, I think that he could probably beat Biden and all of these sorts of things. I no longer believe that. Like, I mean, it was kind of slowly changing anyways in the polling and in like sentiment, but like that one decision alone tells me that he probably can't beat Biden. Okay, define woke. So my definition of woke would be public philosophy and public policy decisions that promote some sense of social equity, that everybody should have the same outcomes over actually being effective. That to me is what is woke. That's what I mean by woke when I'm using it in that context. So, yeah, identity over meritocracy. Yeah, exactly. So, when the city of San Francisco votes that we should give every Black American that was born in San Francisco in the last 50 years and is identified as Black for at least 10 years, $5 million. That is a woke policy. So you're giving people money because of their identity. And it's a policy that's likely to harm the city of San Francisco, right? Now they're turning down pretty hard here too. The S&P 500 is going. Credit Suisse is still kind of flattish. It'll probably crater that. I'm going to bet that they don't get very far with it. It's just such a dumb policy that I can't imagine. Like I'm still kind of shocked that it even got passed, and I can't imagine that it'll go very far. I tell you why, because here's what I have faith in. Things that are effective work and tend to perpetuate themselves, and things that aren't effective don't work and tend to die out. Right? So if the United States, if the population as a whole insists on adopting ideologies that are ineffective, then yeah, you as a nation are going to decline and go away. Okay. But the reality is that in our modern world, it's really hard to cling on to a ideology that's so detrimental to you for long enough to create that to happen. And so you're already seeing it. For instance, with the trans movement, this is already reversing. You're getting a lot of whistleblowers coming out. You're getting a lot of media outlets starting to talk about the problems with this. You're getting medical journals saying that medical recommendations that people have been making are not backed by enough evidence to warrant surgery. All of these things, and like there's very severe pullback. And even though we're still seeing crazy issues about it. So like the one that I heard this time yesterday was there was a female basketball team that they were going to play against a team that had a trans girl on their team. And so instead of playing against them, they forfeited. And when they forfeited, they were kicked out of like the statewide sports organization and all of this stuff. And so they're suing, or maybe they're being sued. I forget which side of it is, but okay. So crazy stuff is still happening, but I highly doubt that 10 years from now that you're still going to be seeing things like that, because identifying as trans is clearly associated with worse mental health outcomes. And I don't think that the theory that it's because they're discriminated against makes sense, because Black Americans, so like Black immigrants that immigrate to the United States, they're Black, they're going to be discriminated against and hated by people and so forth in society, and yet they're still successful and they don't have the same kind of mental health outcomes that trans people do, right? So you're running into this thing where a community that has that kind of mental health problems is not sustainable, right? It'll change. And you're already seeing it happen. Like the kids are losing interest in it, and right? Effective things will win out. And this is why I'm cautioning you. Like, there's right and there's effective, right? In politics, you have to be effective. and so there are some situations where you kind of have to play the game a little bit and downplay certain positions that you might hold in favor of being effective in this situation, right? So it's not a very good political strategy for Ron DeSantis to be spending a whole lot of time talking about Ukraine right now. It's just not. That's going to lose you an election. You talk about that too much if that's your position, right? Like what I'm thinking now is, okay, so who are you going to have in the election? Who do we know is running? Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley. Yeah, everything just flipped really hard, didn't it? It was just like, so I am seeing a story from the Wall Street Journal that JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley and others are in talks to bolster First Republic. I'm not seeing anything else about that though. This has been going on for about 10 minutes, so let me go a little bit further back. Macron forces through pension reform. Yellen, proposals for a global tax agreement do not violate any tax treaties. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a little it's kind of a little I don't know how to describe it. Jolting, right? Because it seemed like they were mostly positive through the ECB meeting. And then after the ECB meeting ended, there was a short period of upside. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this just absolutely insane sell came out of nowhere. And I mean, this sell is insane. This is like 20,000 net contracts short. That's just like, I can't even explain. But hey, I'm not going to complain because I was short the whole time. Look, I don't know what's happening. I was just gambling on Sim, but I'm not going to complain because I'm short and it went down. So it could be because the S&P 500 is taken off here, right? Is it approaching the overnight low? Oh yeah, we still got a ways to go before the overnight low, don't we? So I am seeing a little bit of absorption in this zone here. So what I started to see was like the liquidity providers kind of started to pull their bids, but then they were iceberging it. So I am kind of thinking that plus we got to get going too. I don't want to hold this all day. I guess I need to just take it off because we can't hold this all day. So I will put 5. I will just take the whole position off at $1,500. I was hoping to get more than 2,000 on this, but come on, there you go. Not because I don't think it'll go lower. I actually do think that we're likely to take another, like it's probably going to pause here. This is probably one of those nodes where it pauses a little bit and then goes further. But I don't have the time to wait around for that. Anyways, I was going to say, who do we think is running? Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley. I think that Ted Cruz probably ends up running again, right? I think Rand Paul probably ends up running again, right? So what are you going to get? You're going to get Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and Rand Paul all saying that we should abandon Ukraine. That's what's going to happen. It's gonna, you don't want DeSantis to run. I think it's going to really hurt the Republican Party, right? And Nikki Haley is going to be like the only one not saying that, right? So what's going to end up happening is it's going to end up being a pissing match between Nikki Haley and whoever's doing better between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Right? Like just being the one that is the foreign policy hawk is probably going to make you like the top contender under the current political landscape as I see it. Before, I kind of felt like we don't know enough about what's going on and enough about Ron DeSantis to know. Now I'm not. You know, here's the other thing. I'm not sure that Ron DeSantis can beat Trump. Like, what? The Republicans prefer Trump, but the general public prefers DeSantis. I wouldn't trust. I think that polls on like how they would do against Joe Biden are really useful right now, but polls about between the different Republican candidates aren't going to be very useful because most of the public don't really know anything about them, right? So the issue that I see with Trump versus DeSantis is how does DeSantis differentiate himself from Trump? Because so far everything that I've seen is I'm going to do everything that Donald Trump would have done, except for I have better social skills or something, you know? Like there's not a difference in policy. And I think that people need to understand that it's not just the personality for Donald Trump. Okay. Like that's a really major factor. And that's why he is hated so much by people on the other side of the aisle and everything. But you have to realize that there are also some positions within his platform that are very toxic to a large portion of the country. Okay. And Ron DeSantis is kind of running full bore into some of those. Some of them I think that you go for. I think that the whole woke thing, yeah. You run against wokeness 100%. Running against wokeness is a great strategy right now. Okay. But there are some other positions, like with the Ukraine war, I see them taking that are really, really hurt your political chances. See, if Ron DeSantis had come out and said, well, I don't like what's going on in the Ukraine war, but I still think that it's important for us to support Ukraine and to not allow this breach of global foreign policy protocol to go through, sort of thing. Like, if that's all he said, then he'd be golden. He'd be set. Like, he'd be guaranteed to win. Okay, I gotta get going though, guys. So title, we're gonna say markets tentative during ECB press conference. Stay excellent.